right. Welcome back, everyone, to our December Cosmic Conversation, final Cosmic Conversation of 2023. There'll be plenty more in 2024. We're really excited for, I think, a fun conversation on our last month of the year. Today we have Alexander Major from the Children's Creativity Museum, who's going to share a bit of the details and lessons learned from their NASA's Universe of Learning Informal Learning Network programming, and tell us about how they've been using hands-on sessions, using 3D printed space objects in interactive workshops, showcasing the scale and their scale and cultivating interest in astronomy, which we're very excited about. So I will pass it off to Alexander to tell us more about the program and what they've been up to and share some lessons learned. And you are, there we go.
Definitely. Thank you, Erica, so much for the introduction, and I'm really glad to be here and share what we've done with the Universe of Learning and our implementation. So with that, I will get started. Let me share my screen and start the presentation. All right, can you guys see my screen all right? Awesome. So just a quick background getting into things. It's about where we hosted our implementation. The Children's Creativity Museum is a hands-on multimedia art and technology experience designed to build creative confidence in children ages 2 to 12. That's our core audience. What makes us a little different from other museums is that everything is hands-on and interactive. Children are able to not just take in media, but also play a vital role in creating the experience. And be it art or technology, that really is what sets us apart. Our mission is to nurture creativity and collaboration in all children and families. We believe that creative expression, innovation, and critical thinking are core to fostering the next generation. And really, a big part of that, is what we're all about, is ensuring that all of our offerings, all of our programs are able to be really absorbed by the entire population. Really with key elements being ensuring that people who are underserved and certain with arts or astronomy in this case, that they are able to get access to quality educational experiences. So we, San Francisco, 25% of our visitors are on EBT, and so we make our experiences free to them. There are also many of these same demographics that go to Title I schools, and so we really are all about ensuring that they have the same access to education that everybody has access to. So equity is a really key component of who we are and what we do. Going into this specific project, our educators were really inspired by some of the resources that we saw in the Informal Learning Network. And we really, since we're all about a hands-on approach that allows kids to be able to relate to things at an approachable level and learn key concepts in a way that's approachable to them, we wanted to sort of blend what we saw here and make it sort of part and parcel with our own educational philosophy of that. So what we did is we wanted to have a hands-on 3D printed elements like what we did here, like what you saw here in the tactile explorations of extrasolar objects by Science Central. And when we really started to draft this, we wanted to, at first it was very similar to what we saw, and we were tailoring it toward an older demographic of kids aged 7 through 9. And that was really what we thought we were going to get. It was when we were started to promote this to schools, to our local schools. We thought that would be, that would take hold and that would be effect. But what we really saw is that our demographics skewed much younger. And when we were actually hosting this workshop, as you'll see. So with that being said, this was the key element of what we wanted to do. Throughout the 2022 to 2023 school year, the Children's Creativity Museum facilitated hands-on sessions using 3D printed space objects in an interactive workshop, showcasing their scale and cultivating interest in astronomy. And we wanted to make it very, very, very approachable, very personable for kids to relate to, for them to understand. We wanted to sort of bridge that gap between what kids are able to take away in the textbook and what they're able to see in the here and now in real life. And we wanted to sort of just bridge those two together. And I think we did that. It was very successful in really having 3D printed space objects that kids could relate to, um, not and then building a workshop around that so that it wasn't simply here are the objects, see them, but actually knowing, how they what part they play in the world in space. And so that was really at the core of what we did. Um, when we hosted our first workshop, as I said a few minutes ago, we realized that our audience did skew younger, and so we had to modify this workshop to um, make it enjoyable to them, make it applicable to them. And so what we did, and one element that we did is that our space objects 3D printed um, had a lithophane effect in which a light was shown from the inside of the globe, and the thickness of the print demonstrated the texture of the planet's surfaces. And this enabled just, in addition to making it a little bit more eye-catching, and I think it actually just allowed them to see a little more clearly how the objects related to each other, how they related to the world at large, understood scale. So the lithophane effect, I think, was really critical, and our educators implemented that early on after we saw, some takeaways in terms of our audience. Because our audience skewed younger, we wanted to actually build upon the workshop, add to it. We added a variety of child-friendly books. What the workshop looked like is that our educators would read a series of books, one or two books, to a group of kids. These kids were anywhere ages from really 2 to 6, I'd say. And so especially the toddlers were able to really just sit back and enjoy this component. But that's really how the experience started. Just and then answer and then after reading some of these books, asking questions, and then that allowed us to segue into the actual 3D printed elements of the workshop. That sort of gave them some context, enabled them to understand what we were going for, and I think really it was really important, especially with our younger audience in mind. Yeah, you can see a picture here of that. That's really just how the beginning of the workshop, what it looked like. And the picture you saw earlier, I'll go back a few slides. This chronologically is later on in the workshop when kids are able to see sort of up close the scale of various extrasolar objects. We had Saturn, we had some stars, we had some planets, and this really enabled them to just sort of see more closely what they heard about in the story and just sort of understand scale and texture, I'd say also. Following the actual 3D printed elements of the workshop, we actually incorporated an activity sheet in which participants began with coloring in the sun, moon, and earth, and then they were encouraged to cut them out and assemble them together using metal brads. This would simulate the Earth's orbit around the sun and the moon's orbit around the Earth. And so our goal was to create a comprehensive experience that was hands-on, educational throughout everything, and then actually having them be actively engaged in the entire learning process. And so I think in that we were able to sort of build upon what we saw already accomplished and then sort of tailor to our demographic, but take away those key elements and also align it very clearly with our mission, with our purpose. And in doing so, I think we were able to really appeal to younger kids and older kids, which was our original objective. I don't think that was compromised, but I think that in that sort of multifaceted approach, building upon the 3D printed element, we were able to sort of include everybody. And so the outcomes in this is that children use critical thinking and creativity in responding to the various drawing and writing prompts. Students utilize computational thinking to consider the size and scale of the space objects. And then this last one, which is, I think, this is really where it coalesced with UOL's mission and also our mission. Children of all socioeconomic backgrounds received quality and approachable scientific learning prompts and activities that were developed in consultation with a subject matter expert. And again, with our educators planning this, working with the subject matter expert, ensuring that things were scientifically accurate, and then also being able to be scaled to our audience, I think was really key. And that in a nutshell is what we accomplished.
That is fantastic. That sounds like a great program. I really appreciated how, you know, as we all know, universe of learning, our focus is so the universe beyond our solar system, and you were able to make I saw some of the connections to, right, the things that young people are most familiar with, our solar system, our planets, but I saw, in the book, the sun is our favorite star, right? Making that connection that it's not just our sun, but it is a star, part of our bigger universe. And then I see you had the instruments, right? How we study beyond our solar system. So I really appreciate that connection, right? Because as we all know, we have to start with the familiar, and that's what young people are going to be most familiar with. So before Jesse and I, who always have lots of questions, jump in, does anybody have any questions, or do you have any questions or thoughts that you want to share, prompt our group with?
One question that I had, and one thing I learned in this is that I throw up to you guys is, in your own experiences, or just in terms of what you've seen, what are the best ways? Since we found, again, scaling key, keeping things that scientifically accurate and sound, but making it approachable to all demographics, be it younger kids or older kids, skewing things in different directions. Maybe how have you done that, and how have you found success in doing that?
I'll open that up to the whole group because I think that's a great question for the whole community. Anybody want to jump in on that conversation?
I can stop sharing here.
Well, I think children's creativity has been one of our greatest successes in creating connections for our youngest audiences. I think we've really learned a lot from your expertise. So I think that's that is how we've grown as NASA's Universe of Learning, is really learning from all of you, and making those connections there. I think we've gained some really great hands-on arts activities from from groups as well. So I would love to hear from the rest of the group, though, on their audiences. I think I really appreciate the thoughtfulness on how you connect, our mission to the mission, and make sure that you're doing what is best for your audiences and how you're helping them grow in your areas of expertise.
Curious how long it took you to create your three-dimensional objects, and what did you use for the material to make them?
Yeah, so it took us about a month or two to actually, about 6 weeks to get everything sort of together, planned, and then actually created. And as far as materials go, I'd have to talk with our education development staff. I can definitely get back to you on those specifics. Yeah, we bought a 3D printer, and then and first we're going to buy 3D printed objects. We bought our own, but as far as the actual filaments and the materials, I can definitely get back to you specifically.
I definitely like the idea of 3D printing. That's not something we've necessarily utilized in Moorhead Planetarium. We have like a tinkering space that we have. We call it our launch lab. And we have some tools in there that is kind of a space where we kind of put out just a general topic or activity, but don't have it necessarily a defined destination, which is really great with a lot of our younger audiences of, putting out things that could make a series of different things, but not saying, necessarily leading them along the way. But I think that there could be opportunities for creating some of the, the 3D printed objects. We have a small laser cutter, which is something that I feel like haven't fully utilized for a lot of our potential. And, we have some laser engraving, but we haven't implemented 3D printing in our tinkering space yet. And so I think that's one of the areas that I'm excited by as a home 3D printer to bring 3D printing into our educational spaces as well.
Definitely, I think there's that's really helpful to think about, that element expanding there too. Yeah, this was our first time 3D printing objects of space. We had Mars, we had Saturn, and we had the moon, and that was definitely something I think we want to expand upon. So thank you.
It's really funny to see the lithoplaning, because in the CFA Slack, one of the scientists here was just commenting about creating the lithoplanes of the moon and things. So it's really timely. Might have to share your program stuff with them so they can, learn from it. other group conversations around this? I think it's a really exciting program. Do you know why? What have you learned? Right, you said you were expecting a slightly older audience and then ended up with this younger audience. Do you know what was, what was it about the program that they were excited about, or, what did you learn from that process of, going in expecting kind of that, upper elementary and getting, some look like some toddlers and things in there, which is
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, definitely. So it's a couple of variables. One is simply the demographics of San Francisco skewing younger in terms of kids that are going to museums, kids that are living in San Francisco is one. And again, these are we in the past we've worked, and even after COVID, we've worked with 3 primary schools that are all within walking distance, all serving low-income children. And these schools are elementary schools, middle schools, and so we definitely expected to get some more kids from that demographic, from that age group, participating in the workshop. And we did to an extent, but our overall museum visitor base is definitely skewed younger, and so we sort of had those two competing at the same time, where we didn't want to abandon our earlier mission, but we needed to realize that the younger kids would need to relate to this. So that's why we sort of built on top of the workshop.
Great.
I'm kind of curious of particularly it sounding like a lot of the program attendees were self-selected of just general museum attendees that kind of just came to attend a program. For us, we have some of those, but we also have, some of the younger groups, not quite as young as you were talking about, but in terms of field trip scale. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how this might scale to a, larger program for maybe a little bit of an older audience, that maybe 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade audience, because we get a much higher impact and number of attendees when it's our field trip programs versus our general audience as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. Yeah, so in terms of field trips, we do offer field trips, and we saw that one of our earlier plans was to actually have this be field trip, and then we shifted our plan to actually where, since we know we work with the teachers at these schools, Bessie Carmichael, Tenderloin, Gordon J. Lau School. These schools are San Francisco elementary schools. We work with them, and we after talking with these teachers, we realized that our field trip program was already in certain other areas. We weren't able to fully coalesce it together, but what we wanted to do was to open it up to these kids to visit the museum for free, and take part in the workshop that way. And yeah, I think expanding this to a field trip, definitely, even for older kids, as you said, I think we would probably, of course, drop the story element, definitely have more visuals, and actually expand the 3D printed element of it, and skew it older that way. I think having a little more text heavy in terms of posters, things that you can actually interact with and talk about, and then just expanding through the 3D printed element all the way, it could definitely be skewed to a field trip. And I think that that's something that, building on this, I'd want to see happen.
Other questions? I know Jesse's holding it in to make sure other people get to ask questions.
I can I can jump in though, just one question. So through your program, I was very interested on the, considering how young they are, the approach you took to sustaining interest. Because with this group, it's exciting, but it's also like they're inspired and then they run away. So how do you have that sustainability with this age group for something like astrophysics, that you can sort of keep building upon that interest with future programs as well?
Definitely. I think a part of that was just the environment that this workshop took place in a dark enclosed space. I think definitely captivated them with the lights, the stars. We were able to sort of create the aura of of what we want of outer space, basically. And that's what we were able to accomplish. So I think definitely for everybody, and this was right. This occurred right at the entrance of our museum. So everybody saw where this was taking place. We didn't really advertise inside the museum. We were able to sign people up for the workshop. So I think definitely that got kids' attention immediately, and in terms of sustaining it. Again, I think just having the three different components of the workshop being story time, and that only lasted 10 minutes or so before we moved on to actually interacting with the planets and learning scale, learning texture, all that stuff, learning about sun, the moon, now how they relate to each other, the Earth, and then after that, actually sort of themselves documenting what they learn in that more. In that where they were to cut those planets out and actually see for themselves and apply what they've learned. So I think in that three-pronged approach, they were able to sort of learn the story, but actually then see it close up and actually apply it. I think enabled them to sort of sustain their interest for the hour that it took to do the whole workshop.
And did you find as you're going, sorry, I'm asking another question. Did you did you find as you went through the program and going through it for the main core audience, who is that younger group, did you find that there was some engagements with their older siblings that were in attendance, or with the parents or companions to the children? Was it just focused on the younger people within that program, or were you able to engage some of the other folks who were participating as well?
Yeah, definitely thank you for asking. Yeah, so parents and older siblings were definitely collaborated together
Perfect.
and really in all three components. They were asking questions, which is really we wanted them to ask questions. They were actually engaged with cutting the planets out with and our educators are trained in being able to sort of interact with kids that are a little more quiet, younger kids, and also parents, and able to coax them into interacting with their own kids, asking their kids questions, be it parents or caregivers. So yeah, we really found that it was a successful collaboration where the whole family, the whole group was able to really enjoy the workshop.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexander. That was great.
I actually have a question because, this is an opportunity for us all to learn from each other. And that is also very true for us as NASA's Universe of Learning. And when I get your opinion and the whole group's opinion on, we want to provide resources for the whole spectrum of folks out there. And what are some things that we could be working on producing, as an organization that's creating resources for the broader community, for these young audiences or the family audiences that you would find most helpful in implementing your programs?
Yeah, so actually, it's a good question, because with what we saw here, I think you having sort of a repertoire of what other organizations have done, really that I think just maintaining that and just continuing to showcase, what is possible. I think and I think just making that kind of material available. So if it's online, maybe workshops like what we've done, what you guys have done, definitely just being able to I'd say promote those as a starting point. That would allow other museums, other educational organizations to really understand how to skew things for our older kids, or any group. I think just having that material out there, and then in terms of creating new material, I think again, just in this case astronomy, just thinking what are kids learning in school? What are they learning? But what's the gap? What are they not applying in the real world? And looking at ways to bridge that gap.
That's great.
Yeah, that's good you mentioned that, because we're thinking for future iterations and how we promote on our main page on Universe of Learning, how to show some of those adaptabilities with existing program models. So showcasing how folks like Children's Creativity and other folks on the call here have taken pre-existing program models and adapted them for their audiences. And so we're thinking of ways to promote and highlight that within our web pages as well, and what products we can bring to the table. So I'm glad that is of interest. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add one quick thing, I think NGS standards, I want to say it's Appendix 4, that just highlighting what I said earlier about kids being able to apply to learn astronomy or any scientific subject in school, but then not really having an outlet to see it applied in the real world. I think it really I think that will close the gap completely, and that will younger kids, older kids in different ways. But I'd say really it was maybe easier. You could argue it was easier in terms of our younger audience, but definitely for older kids, I think that's an area that's untapped, especially when you think about kids that may be underserved in scientific opportunities.
That's great. So 2 more minutes. So if there's a final question for Alexander or the program, feel free to ask that. And Alexander, are you planning to do versions of this program in the future? Do you think there was some interest with your public for continuing this type of programming?
Definitely, yeah. And I think just with more time to the project period, we are still hosting workshops. We have one coming up 28th, 29th, that last weekend of December, whatever day that is. But we have one coming up, and yeah, I think definitely there are still ways to expand this further to make it even better, to make it and I think that if just given more time, I think we definitely could see the project going forward.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it, especially given that it's so close to the holidays. So thank you for showing up and for everyone for joining us today. This was really nice to hear how some of our resources are impacting audiences on the ground. So thank you for doing this work and pushing it through. This is exciting. So thank you.
You appreciate it.
Yeah, and happy holidays, everyone. See you
Happy
in the new year.
holidays.
Yeah, see you 2024. Bye.